We're going to leave a couple of minutes for people to join. Welcome, everyone. Hello, everyone. We are leaving some couple of minutes for some people to join. Welcome. So I think we can start now. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us to the fourth and last webinar of the webinar series organized by the Immigrant Council of Ireland and DCU, Diversity in Politics. Today we have three panelists. We have Councillor Jim O'Leary from Dún Laoghaire County Council. We have Margaret E. Ward from as the CEO of the Cllr Inc. and Robert Saunders from the Immigrant Councils. So we are going to discuss what it takes to run an electoral campaign. And we're going to start with Margaret E. Ward. She is a leadership consultant, executive coach, inclusion campaigner, and a former journalist broadcaster. Her company, Cllr Inc. helps CEO, boards, teams, and European politicians develop their strategic communication skills. Communications training coaching clients include Women for Election, members of the European Parliament, the European Central Bank, and Google. Before working as a consultant, she was a financial and investigative journalist for the Sunday Times, Irish Times, and was a presenter on News Talk. In 2010, she founded non-for-profit Women on Air to ensure greater diversity on the airwaves. Thank you, Margaret, for joining us today.
My pleasure.
We have Councillor Jim O'Leary from Dún Laoghaire County Council. He's a Fine Gael councillor on Dún Laoghaire Rathdown County Council, representing the Dundrum local electoral area. He was first elected in 2004 and again in 2009, topping the poll. He was unsuccessful candidate in the 2007 general election. He retired from politics in 2010, but returned in 2019 after giving up work. He's a member of the Council Audit Committee and chairperson of the Environment and Climate Action Strategic Policy Committee. He's interested in the areas of housing policy and local government reform. Thank you, Councillor Jim, for joining us today. And finally, we have Robert Saunders. He is the communications coordinator at the Immigrant Council, who he joined in May 2020. Specializing in all things digital, he is responsible for maintaining the Council's website and social media properties, as well as growing online donations. Originally from Canada, Robert graduated from York University with Bachelor's of Arts degree in International Studies and came to Ireland in 2014, where he has been completing postgraduate diplomas in International Communications and European Public Affairs from the European Institute of Communications. Prior to joining the Immigrant Council, Robert was digital manager at the Irish Cancer Society. Thank you, Robert, for joining us.
Thanks, Liliana.
And we are going to start perhaps with Margaret. Thank you, Margaret, and you can share your slides and welcome.
Thanks very much. Hi, everybody. It's great that you're here and that you're interested in potentially running for election. So I run a lot of these with different groups, and I'm a big believer in the idea that diversity in politics means stronger politics and better outcomes for everybody. So I'm going to share with you a slide deck that I use. I'm going to run through it, but I will share it then with Liliana, and you're welcome to circulate that because there's some exercises on there that might be very helpful for you when you are learning, what your pitch is or how to communicate with people. So the first thing that you need to think about is connection, right? So I'm just going to share some slides with you. Let's see, make sure I have the right one. Yep. So public speaking and communications. So we're just going to talk about how you make an impression with people, speaking in public with confidence, creating a personal pitch to colleagues, supporters, and voters, because before you run, you actually need to get the support of your community or a group of people or a party, or even your friends and family who might help out with canvassing or campaigning. How you can get your message across quickly and effectively to connect with people, and how you develop a core communications message. So you want to really assess and choose your battles. So Liliana, I'm going to put you in charge of keeping me on time here. Okay, so you give me a little wave and you go, Margaret, you're going way over. So I'm going to fly through them. And as I said, I'm going to share them. So who are you? That's a really important question. You go and you knock on somebody's door, or you go to a conference, or you're having a chat with somebody, and the first thing that they're going to hear is your accent. So as an American, I can tell you that the first thing Americans hear, people here is my accent. So I've been living here for 27 years and I'm still that American girl, Margaret. I'm still the Yank. And even when you say that you've lived here for 27 years, people will try to tell you how to get to Grafton Street or, wherever it is. So that's something that you can use as both a barrier, but also an advantage because it makes you stand out. You're different. People are going to remember you from every Mary, Jim, Dan, and Susan living on the road. So sometimes things that you think are negatives can be positives. So it's very important that you think about who you are, why people should care about who you are, and how you communicate that quickly, because a lot of this is going to be about speed, making an impression quickly. So typically when I work with Women for Election and others, there's a personal pitch, right? So all the parties will say to you, you need to say, my name is Margaret Ward, I'm running for Dunleary County Council or wherever. I'll represent you by focusing on housing and education and homelessness. You may have heard about this issue because housing is a big issue in our area, and you may have read in the news. I believe that. And you say, what do you do about it? And please vote for me. Now, if you just go to somebody's door and you go, blah, 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 they're nodding, the dinner's burning, the kids are screaming, right? The dog is biting your ankle because you haven't taken a nap. Who cares? Like, I actually don't care. Don't come to my door and just be like, you're talking at me. Enough people are talking at people all day long at work. They're not going to want to hear it. So I want you to rethink this and reframe it a little bit when you're doing this work yourselves, or if you're helping somebody else to run for election. By the way, that's an orange vote, in case you're wondering. Why should we care? This is the other thing. So a lot of people will show up about something they're really passionate about. It's terrible, this housing crisis, and, government isn't doing anything about it, and everybody's nodding, they all agree. But why should we care? What are you going to do about it? Why is this issue important to me? Maybe housing isn't an issue for me, but you're passionate about it. How are you going to make me listen? So think about all these things when you're crafting that pitch. Why should I care? And people might even say that to you. I don't care. Go away. I'm really upset about taxation. I don't care. I don't mind paying my tax. It's used well. Go away. So be prepared for that. But generally, people are very nice on the doorstep. I've done a lot of canvassing myself for different candidates, and generally people are nice. They're up for a chat. If they're not, they'll kind of say, look, I'm really busy. Sorry, come back later. Or yeah, and they'll take a brochure off you. Now, this is an exercise for you to do in your own time. It's about changing your perspective on things. That's why I have it sideways. So what's your unexpected story? So maybe when you're thinking about pulling your pitch together, interview somebody, interview a family member or a friend and say to them, what interesting or funny thing happened to make you want to work as an engineer, work in hospitality, become a parent, move to Ireland, whatever it is, right? Get the conversation going and see what they say, and then write down what you remember. That's a powerful exercise because it shows you what sticks in people's heads. So do that in your own time, okay? But it's a good one, and try it again with a few people. You'll get some good stories too. So why do stories work? So stories work because from the time we're born, that's how we learn. Fairy tales, parables, fables, the story of don't go down, you know, and run across the road because a car will knock you down. You know, our idea of the world comes from storytelling, even before we know how to read or understand a lot of things. They have a structure. They have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And they frame information and make it understandable to people. So when you're talking to people, you don't want to do a tell, you know, I'll fix things around here. That's a tell. A show is, I'm very concerned about the crumbling community center here. That used to be a great place for the teenagers to hang out, but nobody goes there anymore. And I think that together we can really do something by fixing that up and making it a place where families feel safe to go. I'm putting a picture in people's heads with that. So be really clear with that when you're telling a story. This is just about how the brain works and what makes it sticky. So if I'm telling, I'm only hitting two parts of the brain, right? They've looked at MRIs where your brain lights up. But if I'm telling you a story that involves motion or color or emotion or sensation, it's going to really stick in your brain for a lot longer. So there's a lot of research on that, but I just thought that was interesting. This is your typical storytelling pyramid. You begin the story. So wait until I tell you what happened today. I bumped into my old friend, John. Do you remember John? That's the beginning of it. And then you go on and you tell your story from there. So how to make us care. Have an understanding of how people think, what they care about in your area, what makes the story stick, what's memorable. It takes a lot of work. Also, be aware that if you speak too quickly, people won't understand you. Just like, look, I don't know if you've been to Cork or Kerry, but I cannot understand a lot of Kerry people, right? I'm just back from Kerry and I'm like, I've lived here 27 years and I have no idea what they're saying. And especially if they're talking and laughing at the same time, which is usually what they do when they encounter me. But anyway, slow down, enunciate your words, practice it on an Irish person. You know, my husband is Irish and I'll often be like, blah, blah, blah. And he'll go, whoa, like slow down, slow down. So just be aware of speaking more slowly and enunciating the words so that when you're talking to people on the doorstep, Irish or otherwise, that they understand what you have to say so that your effort isn't lost. Eye contact, as you can see, is very important from this picture. A smile, the way you're holding your body, you know, don't cross your arms and yeah, I'm here just to tell you I want to run and here's my brochure. Nobody's going to connect with that. So use your natural warmth. Humor is always really good on the doorstep. So when you're speaking with confidence, you want to be very clear before you go into a room who's in the audience, right? So before I agreed to do this, I had to know who was going to be here. So who's hosting this? So in the audience, people here are possibly interested in running for election. Their background is mixed. You know, you're from different countries, different areas of the world, or you were born here. You've been living here. Your parents may have been immigrants, as my parents were, Irish immigrants to New York. The purpose, when I'm speaking to you, I had to define that. What is it? To give you top tips for public speaking and communication, and what are my key messages? So you can use that as a nice framework for anything you're doing when it comes to public speaking and communication. It's very simple, but it's very powerful to make sure you don't go off on a tangent. Your personal pitch. So this is where we get into more of the human side of it. So why you? You know, as Jim will let you know, I'm sure, why? Like Jim would show up on the doorstep and 5 minutes later, there are 3 more candidates. And why? What did Jim do? What do people do to connect on the doorstep? Like what drives Jim? Why should I care about him? Why is he different from every other candidate? Is it because he's wearing a Dublin jersey and I'm a Dublin GAA fan? Is it that he likes my dog? Is it that I see him cycling by my kid's school all the time, so I recognize him? People want to know, like, who are you really? Are you're just doing it for money and power, and you're just going to, you know, be a money grubber politician who wants it all for your own power and glory? You know, that's a lot of people have that impression. So you have to dispel that. And again, what is in it for them? It's not all about you. It's actually about them, because you want their vote. So what are the issues that they're interested in, they're angry about, they're happy about in their local area? And what makes you different? That's it. What makes you different? What makes you memorable compared to your challengers or your opponents? And once again, why should they care? Why? So connecting with people. Human connection is everything. It's absolutely everything. And it's the hardest thing to do because we're so busy. We're so distracted with social media, as we'll hear later on from Robert, with busy lives, work, responsibilities. So to get people, you probably have about 3 seconds to get their attention. So really focus on that connection and practice, practice, practice. So I put this personal pitch up here again, because after doing all that practice, I want you to try it again with heart. You know, what's your name? Who are you? You know, what the heck are you doing on my doorstep? Or why are you speaking at this council meeting? Or why did you ask me to go for coffee with you? Why did you show up at this soccer pitch? I've never seen you here before. You know, why are you in this community center? What are you doing at my church? You know, people are going to go, whoa. So make sure that you try over and over again to connect with them. So it doesn't feel like a pitch. It actually feels like a conversation. Your core communications message is very important. Choose your issues. Don't just go, oh, yeah, I'm going to fix everything around here. Here are the 10 things I'm going to cover. No, you kind of want to have 3. You want to say, okay, maybe it's environment, crime, healthcare, whatever it is that you know is important in the area, but that you feel that you're knowledgeable about, and you can do something about it. And choose your battles, choose your key messages, and choose the platform on which you're going to run. And this is a very good thing for you to do once you get your pitch and once you have some idea of why you're running and what makes you different. Practice this, role play this with your friends and family, pitching to people on the doorstep, chairing a meeting. So you might have to chair a constituency meeting, speaking at a meeting, either as a panelist virtually like this, or at a conference, or maybe a smaller group in a community hall. How do you support one another in meetings? Make sure you have some people with you. You don't just walk into a meeting on your own. Have some backup. Really important you have people traveling with you. You know, never canvass on your own. Like, I don't care who you are. It's crazy to canvass on your own. Have somebody with you, because they can help if the conversation gets heated. They can help if the person you're talking to is actually upset. They can take notes, they can be a good listener, and just also for safety, I think everybody should travel in pairs or even bigger groups if possible. How do you influence afterwards? So how do you follow up with somebody when you've had a conversation with them? If the good political parties take notes and that is given to somebody and they create, you know, a little note for themselves, get back to so-and-so on the difficulty with overhanging trees in the park that are causing a safety issue. And then reinforcing the ideas between either council meetings, community meetings, or whatever. Don't just go, oh, I heard it and it's over. And then you go to another meeting and you're on to the next thing. You need to be a good record keeper, because people feel trust and respect when you do that, and you don't forget about issues that are important to them. The number one thing I can say here is bring your fire. If you really want to run and you really think you can make a difference, let us see it. Like, don't hide that light under a bushel. Don't, go, oh, I have to be this cookie cutter politician with no personality, like this visor comes down like I'm a computer. No, like, show us your humanity. Show us what you can do so that we want to vote for you, because we think you're somebody who can make a difference. So thank you very much. I hope I did okay there, time-wise. How'd I do, Liliana? All right? Didn't bore everybody to tears?
You did. Thank you very much. That was very good. Thank you, Margaret.
You're welcome.
Perhaps we can continue with Councillor Jim. And if you have any questions, please put it in the chat, and we might have 10 minutes at the end to respond. Thank you.
You can see that, yeah?
Yes.
I'm conscious of the time. Thanks everyone for being here. So I'll try and go through it as quickly as possible. My slide deck isn't as professional as Margaret's. I'm going to assume I'll skip through this, the nomination process. I have a link there to the slides. The Citizens Information Service will explain it all to you. But basically, as long as you're a resident in the country, that you're not in jail, you don't work in the public service, you're eligible to run. If you're a member of a political party, they'll look after the nomination process. If you're not, you'll need someone to nominate you, and then you'll either need to put down a deposit of €100, or you need another 15 voters to assent to you running. So that's that one there. The next big thing is money. And I suppose it's a dirty phrase, but money is important. And the amount of money you can spend in a campaign is managed and controlled. And it's determined by how many people are in the local area that you're running in. So in my district, we have a population electorate of about 30,000, which means over 90 days, I can only spend 11,500, which is a huge sum of money. In terms of donations, you have to keep track of your donations. You'll need people to help you with your campaign. And whether you get elected or not, you will have to make an official return as to who gave you money and how it got spent. If you're fortunate and you get elected, it will be published online. You can't take more than €1,000 from any one individual. You can't take anonymous donations over €100. You can't take cash over €200. And if you do get a donation of €100 or more, you have to open up a bank account and put all future donations into that bank account. But it doesn't preclude you having fundraising events like a quiz night, where people are buying tables for 10 or 15 euros. That can just be done anonymously, and again, but and put into an account. And similarly, you could have a launch party where maybe you invite people to your house. You're literally just serving them drinks, and you have a bucket in the corner, and you ask them to make donations. You also ask them to make sure that it's less than €200 to keep put in the system. To give you an idea of how much money people do spend, I looked at Limerick City Council, my own council area, for whatever reason, they didn't have it up at the time. And you can see there that 40% of people in the Limerick City and Council area spent between €2,000 and €4,000. Another 35 spent between €4,000 and €6,000. So it's a big chunk of change. Now, that being said, there were 4 candidates spent less than €2,000 and they were elected. So it's very important that you think about the cost of running and that you put together a budget and you prioritize what you're going to spend your money on. But the reality is most of your money will go on posters and leaflets. There's other things like, rosettes, hats, stickers, jackets, and drinks after canvassing to thank the people. And you can see there in the the right-hand corner, I spent over half of my money in my last election in leaflets. I kind of went to town on leaflets. Not that it did me much good at the end of the day. The next thing is your campaign team. You're going to need to have people around you, and you have to think of your family, because this is going to impact on them, and you have to make sure that they're okay with the idea of you running. And maybe they're happy for you to run, but they don't want to be overly involved, and you need to insulate them. And again, particularly what age are your children? If this is a big thing for you, they're going to pick up on that. And if you're not successful, they'll feel the pain as much as you'll feel the pain. So you need to try and insulate them as much as possible. If they're okay with the idea, and they're up for it, as it were. Exploit them to the fullest extent possible. The electorate, voters, Irish people love to see families. Put them in pictures on your leaflets, have them outside churches, exploit them to the greatest extent possible. The next thing is you need a campaign manager, and you need somebody who wants you to get elected as much as you want to get elected yourself. And this is the person, and I'm going to apologize now. There's a few pictures of me coming up, but this is the guy that's going to be in your corner. So if you're a member of a party, he's going to be at campaign meetings. He's going to be fighting your corner. He's going to be looking and monitoring votes at the actual count. He's going to help you organize. He's going to try and keep you grounded, or she's going to try and keep you grounded. So it's really important that you get someone who's committed, and it's someone that shares the burden with you. As an example, we had a long count at my last election, and that night, myself and my wife, Paul and his girlfriend, we went out for dinner because it was his girlfriend's birthday, and they had spent the whole day helping me at a count. So that gives you a sense of the commitment that's there. Then you need to try and pull a team together. If you're a member of a party, you need to realize that these are party members. They will be shared amongst other candidates. So you're going to fall back on your own network and your own friends. You have to try and make it fun. And, you know, you have to have a bit of crack when you're out there. I always joke that we're out trying to harvest votes. And you have to be happy. You have to be up the whole time. And you have to remember that these are people that are giving their time for you, because you're the beneficiary. It's important to you. For them, it's not so important, and it might even be an embarrassment for them in that not everybody is comfortable with the idea of being involved in politics. So be very conscious of that. Margaret has covered an awful lot of this, like what's your motivation and what's your sales pitch, like why are you doing this, what do you want to get out of it? Are you going to be a member of a party or a non-party candidate? The benefit of being a member of a party is that you come with an instantaneous brand. So as an example, in the last local elections in Dublin, if you were a Green candidate, you were guaranteed being elected almost because of the mood. 5 years prior to that, if you were a Sinn Féin candidate, you were nearly guaranteed in the Dublin area of being elected. And 5 years before that, if you were a Fine Gael candidate, you were nearly guaranteed of being elected. So the electorate swings and the mood shifts, and having the brand of a party behind you is a benefit. Now, that being said, when it comes to local elections, the Irish electorate does like independent and non-party candidates as well. So I think in my own council, I think there's 40 of us, there's at least 5 are non-party. I think I'd say every ward has a non-party candidate. So there's pluses and minuses. And then in terms of what are you selling to the electorate, how do you want to project yourself? Are you the guy that just demonstrates a huge amount of energy, which people pick up on and they kind of admire, they kind of look at you and they kind of go, well, he's going to work hard? Or are you trying to sell your experience and what you've done in a previous life? Or is it all about empathy? When you show up in the door, you understand where people are coming from, you listen to them, and they just get this sense from you that, you know, there's some kind of connection. And Margaret has touched on it. The process is really, really personal. And it is always about trying to make a connection with the voter. And, you know, they will ask you directly why they should vote for you. And they will also ask you, what are you going to do for me? So you need to know, you need to have a sense of what the issues are, and, you know, what are you selling? So there's an element here about what brand are you selling? And within the bigger parties, within Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, to a lesser extent, Labour maybe, there will be 2 or 3 of you running on the party ticket. So what you'll find is within parties, I'm not necessarily competing with a Labour candidate. I'm competing with two other Fine Gael candidates. So what makes me different from the other 2 Fine Gael candidates? You need to think in those terms as well. You need to know the game. You need to know the basics. So you need to know how many votes you want. So the first thing you'll need to do is, where are you hoping to run? What's the electorate? How do you calculate your quota? And I have a simple formula there. In my own area, that the electorate's about 30,000. There's 7 seats. You divide by 8. You can assume that turnout will be about 50%. So that means to get elected, you need to get nearly 1,900 votes. And if you're a single candidate, so if you're a non-party candidate or a party or a candidate in a party that's only running one candidate, you'll need about 75% of that to be sure to get elected. But we use the single transferable vote, which means people can indicate a preference, so they can vote 1, 2, 3 down the line. And over here to the right, pointer options, laser pointer. The reason why it's important to look for preferences, you will see here, so the first 7 of us got elected here, but you will see there were 2 candidates that got higher votes than 3 candidates that got elected. So it's really important that you look for those preferences and that you get to understand the way the system works. In terms of knowing your area, this is a map of the Dundrum ward, which I represent. You can get these maps from the county councils. They're then broken down into smaller electoral divisions. And what you want to do is you need to know your area. You need to know where the churches are. You need to know where the schools are. You need to know where the big junctions are, because they're all going to be important places for you when it comes to the actual campaign and canvassing and putting up posters. And you also need to try and get a copy of the tallies. So the tallies are a system that are a process that allow us as candidates to know what part of our ward would be strong for us, if you like. So if we take here, this is Churchtown, Orwell, you can get the tallies for this, and the tallies will let you know whether Fine Gael gets 30% of the vote there or 5% of the vote there. And so you can identify maybe this part of the ward is strong for Fine Gael, this part of the ward is strong for Fianna Fáil, and all down the right hand side is strong for Sinn Féin. And you can decide then, where am I going to concentrate? Or you might find, say, that one of the councillors who isn't running again has decided to retire, but they dominated this area. So this now becomes an area where there's an opportunity for a new candidate to do well, because the most popular candidate in that area is now retired. So if you're in a party, getting the tallies is relatively straightforward. It's an informal process. These are not official figures. If you're a non-party candidate, sometimes you might be lucky in that another non-party candidate might share them with you, or someone who isn't running again might share them with you. So again, know the rules of the game, know how many votes you need, know where your party is strong. The campaign, getting votes out, again, I apologize for all these pictures of me. Coming back, you have to have a plan, you have to have a budget. You need to know when you're putting your posters up, where and who's going to help you with them. You need to know how many leaflets you want to get printed. You need to have them all designed and ready to rock and roll for when the election is called. You need to have you're going to have a 4-week campaign. You're going to have canvasses, maybe 4 nights a week, 3 nights a week. You need to know where you're canvassing. You need to let people know where you're canvassing so they can organize themselves as well. You need to try and get commitments from your friends and from party workers so that you don't show up by yourself. And it is important that maybe that you don't go canvassing by yourself. It's more impactful to have 3 or 4 people. It's also important to keep track of what you've done. You'll be surprised how fast you forget what you've done, because it is a fairly chaotic, high activity 4 weeks, and you'll forget where you've gone. You take your maps, you photocopy them, and you colour in where you've canvassed, you colour in where you've dropped leaflets, just so you can keep track of things. And like I said, you have to have a budget. You have to make sure the money doesn't run out, because you will always find yourself trying to spend more money you mightn't have. So you need to be careful of that. You might find yourself running up stuff on your credit card that you can't afford, or suddenly having an overdraft when you're not entitled to one. So it's really important that you keep a handle on the budget. A tip here, maybe you can run a public meeting before a campaign has officially been called. That allows you to put up posters. It allows you to drop leaflets, a way of introducing yourself, to let people know that you're interested in running. If you can get a high-profile person to speak on whatever the topic you've decided you want to talk about, that's almost like an implicit endorsement. Posters, for me, posters are hugely important. They're like, if you like, they're part of the festival of an election. And in Ireland, when we have an election, by virtue of the number of posters we have, everybody knows there's an election going on. You can be in continental Europe, you can be in the UK, there could be an election going on, you wouldn't even know it. But when you come to Ireland, you see the posters, you know there's an election. Now, people give out about them, but at least people know there's an election happening when you see the posters. I've given you the cost there. I think, plan for maybe about 200, plan for the small diamonds. Again, they're very popular. You kind of throw them up midway through the campaign. It allows you to refresh things. And they are a way of people knowing that you're a candidate. They're probably the most important part of your campaign. And, you try and get them up in the first 2 or 3 nights. you do maybe a refresh during the middle of the campaign. You can never put more than 2 up. It's kind of manners. If you put more than 2 up on a poll, they will definitely get torn down. And you have to remember what goes up has to come down. If you don't take down your posters, you run the risk of fines. So again, there's some posters I had in the past, and the people out with me were family on this occasion. So postering is important. Leaflets, again, when it comes to the leaflets, the advice I'd give, use the exact same pictures that you're going to use on the ballot paper and try and have them a similar design, because what people will see, most of the time, they're not going to read a leaflet. They might probably vote, but they're not going to maybe read the leaflet. And all they take from it, they'll see your image and they'll see your name. And if they go away with that, that's a start. I think it's essential that you have a canvas card, which again, probably just says your contact details, maybe gives a little bit of information about you and what your priorities are. And again, 10,000 of these will cost you about 630 euros. People expect you to try and canvass to them. So they'll moan about the fact that you're knocking on the door. They'll also moan about the fact if you don't knock on the door. And these canvas cards, they're called "Sorry, I missed your card." So a lot of the time, people won't be there when you knock on the door. And this is some evidence that at least you've tried to canvass them. Similarly, if there's very hot issues in the area, you might want to do a specific local issue leaflet. Again, assuming you have the money for it. If you don't, really what's critical is to have just this canvas card. You take this everywhere with you. When you knock on doors, wherever. And you'll always get these as well. You know, they talk about electioneering crap. Don't let it get you down. I mean, the vast majority of people are happy to see more people involved in politics, young people involved in politics, a diverse collection of candidates. The vast majority of people are, but you'll get this kind of stuff. Canvassing. Canvassing is important because it allows you to make that connection, that one-to-one connection. You have to decide when do you do it. You need to get some sense of, you know, are people in at certain times? So you might go to an older part of your ward and canvass, you know, in the morning and in the afternoon, and leave those areas where you know it's a younger population, they're both out working to the evening time. You'll find if you can get people out with you, that there will be days you'll canvass in the morning, maybe between 10:30 and 12:30, in the afternoon between 2:30 and 4:30, and in the evening maybe between 7 and 9 or 6:30 to 8:30. Again, as Margaret said, you have to have a fixed introduction, and the irony of this is they're meeting you for the first time, so you're going to repeat every single time. Your introduction is going to be the same pattern every time, but they're only seeing you once. So you might be meeting hundreds of people, you're repeating yourself 100 times, but they're only seeing you once. That's fine, and it gets easier. And it's a little bit like, I mean, the joke is politics is show business for ugly people, and every time you go to the door, it's a performance. You don't be afraid to ask for the #1 vote. Always ask for a preference. So however you get around to it, ask them, are they committed to their vote yet? Ask them, would they consider giving you the #1 vote? And if they're non-committed, say, look, will you at least give me a preference? And make sure your own canvassers tell you. All they have to do is say that they know you, that they consider you a hard worker, that you're a great guy, whatever it is. They need to make some kind of personal, you know, they need to sell you at a personal level, and they need to ask for a vote as well. There's no point them going to the door, just handing a leaflet. They need to say something nice about you. So after the door-to-door canvassing, the other big thing is just, you know, on Sundays being outside churches. Normally it's Catholic masses. Protestant churches generally don't like it. Mosques don't have a problem, they'll welcome you in as well. So supermarkets, and if you're in an area that has a dart station or a loo station, again, you get people, you know, the advantage of standing outside a loo station between 8 and 9, you're getting everybody going to work, and you literally just stand out there and you hand out a leaflet. Because again, all you want them to see is your name and your image, and that you're hungry for this. You know, don't overestimate how smart the electorate is, but they do want to see people that are hungry for it. And remember, canvassing is a type of interview. Be presentable. Don't be argumentative, which is easier said than done. And don't be afraid to say, look, we clearly don't agree, and just walk away. And the more canvassers you have, the more impactful it is. And you can see there some pictures with the jacket, and people just get a sense that you've got a canvas team. Therefore, they project this idea that you're popular. There must be something about him that's worth considering voting for. And that's it. So I'll stop sharing there now. That was a whistle stop.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much.
There was something of value there.
Thank you, Councillor Jim. I'm sure it was very useful for lots of our migrant audience, who we hope they're going to use Margaret and yourself advice. And now we're going to continue with Robert for the social media section of it. And again, if you have any questions, please put in the chat. Thanks.
Thanks, Liliana. Hi, everybody. My name is Robert Saunders. I work at the Immigrant Council of Ireland. I'm on the communications team, and I work in sort of maintaining the social media channels and website and emails for the organization. So what I want to do is really build on what Jim and Margaret have talked about, but speaking specifically from a social media perspective. So I have some slides that I'm just going to share here. So just give me one sec. And you should see my slides now. Oh, one sec here. Sorry, just a little bit of technical difficulties. Okay, so social media is kind of one of those things now where it's really an essential part of any campaign. You can't really run for election without having a social media presence. Sorry, Liliana, is that working okay for you? It's kind of flashing black and white for me here.
No, it was working. I could see your slides.
Okay. So sorry, yeah. So just to confirm, social media, it's once upon a time, it was new, it was exciting. Not everybody really used it, but it's gotten to the point now where it really is a fundamental to any kind of communications activity, whether it's a business venture, whether it's a political campaign, whether it's an organization like the Immigrant Council. So what I want to do is just start with an overview of what social media looks like specific to the Irish population. And then I'm going to talk about each of the channels and how best to use them. So the first thing is really just, sorry, just give me one sec here. The first thing is just to note that there is approximately 5 million people in Ireland as of January 2022, which is quite significant. It's an even split between men and women. A quarter of those are age 17 and under, whereas there are 49% of people who are aged 18 to 54, which is very much that that age group that is very much consuming social media and new technologies. Obviously, 18 and under are as well, but they're not voting. Just over a quarter are aged 55 plus. So it kind of gives you a sense of the general population demographic, which explains why 99% of the population is online. And so when we say online, they have access to the internet. So how many of those are actually using social media? We know that there are approximately 4 million people in Ireland actively using social media, which is an astounding and Ireland definitely has one of the more active populations in terms of social media activity. So in terms of social media channels, there's a lot of different ones. And when you are campaigning, you have to ask yourself, where do you want to be? And there's no fixed rules. There's no hard evidence. There's no, specific rules around what channels you have to choose to be on. It really is dependent on a couple of factors. One of them is, who is your audience? Who are you trying to reach? Who is your constituent base? Another is, where are you comfortable speaking? Where are you comfortable portraying yourself? And we'll talk about that a little bit more as we go. But first, just some more stats around the different social media channels in Ireland. So what you're looking at is the largest to the smallest usage of social media, and it's very, very surprising. So YouTube tends to be the most used social media channel in Ireland, followed by Facebook and LinkedIn. And then Instagram, and then you also have Snapchat and TikTok. And surprisingly, Twitter has a very low uptake in Ireland, despite the fact that in a lot of political circles, especially, it seems to be the #1 channel for politicians and policymakers. This is something, this has been going around a long time, and it's always been sort of a little infographic that I really appreciate, explaining how different social media channels are used based on eating donuts. So Facebook, and on Facebook, you say, I like donuts. On Twitter, it's I'm eating a tasty #donut. YouTube, watching donut videos. LinkedIn, my skills include donut eating. Instagram, here's a photo of my donut. Snapchat, short video with my donut. TikTok, I dance and sing with my donut. So it kind of shows that there are variations of a topic and how you use different social media channels to talk about that topic. So Facebook is the big one. There are 2.5 million Facebook users in Ireland, which is astonishing when you factor that in for a 5 million population. What that means is that 50% of the population is accessible via Facebook. And that means 50% of the population is also accessible via Facebook advertising, which is a very important factor if you're looking into using Facebook for campaigning. The age difference on Facebook is about 54% female versus 46% male. Most of the demographic splits between the genders is pretty balanced now in terms of most social media channels, with a few exceptions here and there, which makes it a lot easier to kind of go after all your different types of constituents. So with Facebook, you are often sharing your thoughts and experiences. You're connecting with people. You could be connecting with people you went to elementary school with. You might be connecting with people who have a shared interest. You may be part of a group. You may use Facebook events to organize like your social events. So there's a lot of different ways to use it, and it changes frequently. The typical interaction with Facebook is commenting or reacting. There used to be likes, but now we have reactions where it could be loving something, being sad about something, etc. There's a lot of different ways to interact. One of the things to consider if you are using Facebook to hold or to really carry some of your political campaigning online, is if you want to keep a personal profile versus a business page. And the difference is that a business page, and even though it's called a business page, it doesn't have to be a commercial endeavor. It could be a political profile. It could be an organizational page. It could be a charity page. And it really just gives you a few different options in terms of the layout and the interactivity in terms of managing the people that are following you and liking your activity. So Facebook tends to be the big one that everybody knows about. An important thing to note relating back to the advertising is the Facebook algorithm. So Facebook determines, based on its behind the scenes science that it doesn't share with the world, what you see in your news feed. Which really impacts what you are seeing in terms of the brands that you follow, the figures, the celebrities, etc., as well as like the your family members and your friends. And the more you interact with people, the more you should see their content in your news feed. But that's not always the case. Facebook, at the end of the day, is a money-making machine. And that algorithm will favor advertisements over organic content put out by your contacts. So if you are a brand, whether you're a political brand, commercial, an NGO, or what have you, you will inevitably need to spend money on Facebook to get your message out there. And the good thing about social media advertising is that while there are some variations, you can spend as much or as little as you can and as you have. So Twitter tends to be viewed as the doppelganger to Facebook. Twitter defines itself as a news app, and there are 1.4 million Twitter users in Ireland, so not as many as you would think. So it only reaches just over a quarter of the population, both organically and through its advertising. Again, 56% male versus 44% female, so fairly balanced in terms of gender. But Twitter tends to be used by professionals, public figures, and policymakers. Most politicians you will find on Twitter, and if they're not on Twitter, they probably will be eventually, because it's a really great place where they can engage with people, join in conversations, and see what people are talking about. Twitter tends to be in the moment, whereas something on Facebook that you see, it's generally something that will last, it may endure. Once you comment or like it. With Twitter, your Twitter feed is really quickly, it really quickly expires. It's still there, but it tends to replace really often, in which case, a conversation that you're having in the moment, 5 minutes from now, it could be further along somebody's newsfeed and disappears. Twitter is really about conversations. It's about jumping into conversations that are being had on different topics. It's about kind of inserting yourself where your constituent base is having conversations on different topics, And you can look up different topics based on hashtags or trending topics. The typical interaction on Twitter is retweeting, liking, sharing. You can share photos, but often tweets are just text. You can @ someone, and that means using the @ symbol to tag somebody in a post in one of your tweets where they receive a notification that you're tweeting at them. It's a great way to pull people into the conversation. And then there's hashtags, which are the little pound sign. And you can use, generally Twitter recommends between like 2 and 3 hashtags per tweet. So you don't want to go too overboard with your hashtags. And one thing to keep in mind when you're using hashtags is try to avoid acronyms. If you can, try to make them easily readable. And there's a lot of awareness being given nowadays to people with different reading capacities, different reading levels. So you want to make it as literacy friendly as possible. So for example, here we have hashtag best practices. And you can see I've got a capital H on hashtag, capital B on best, capital P on practices. That makes it a lot easier to read. Whereas if that was all small, like small letters, lowercase letters, it would run on, and it kind of, it can be very off-putting, especially if your audience is aren't native English speakers. So it's just something to factor in there. So Instagram is owned by Meta, aka Facebook. So it has a lot of power behind it. 2.4 million users in Ireland. Instagram really is about images, videos, and stories. So that would be short videos. It does tend to skew a little bit more female, but not massively so. You can use as many hashtags as you want on Instagram. Instagram used to be sort of the domain of influencers and celebs, but a lot more people are getting into it, a lot more public figures. We're starting to see a lot more brands, even government departments, creating Instagram accounts and using it as another channel to communicate their messaging out across to different audiences that they might not be reaching on Twitter or Facebook. So it's definitely something to think about as well. LinkedIn, surprisingly, or maybe not surprisingly, has a lot of users in Ireland, with over half the population counting themselves a member of LinkedIn. LinkedIn is primarily a professional network. It's owned by Microsoft. And like Facebook and Twitter and a lot of the other giants, it's headquartered in Ireland. Because Ireland has so many big tech corporations and large corporations and international organizations here, definitely is a factor as to why there are so many users on LinkedIn in Ireland. It's balanced between men and women, and it allows you to do updates and images and video as well, like the other channels. LinkedIn also has an interesting feature where you can actually upload a document as a status update. And if it's a PDF or a Word document, it creates a nice little interface where you can kind of skip through it, almost like a reader, which can kind of give it a bit of a different take. So you could upload a policy document or a brochure, and it might be easier for people to read it that way. So there are a lot of social media channels out there, and it's really hard to know where to be if you want to connect with your constituent base. Like I said at the beginning, YouTube has over 4 million Irish users, 51% females versus 49% men. But YouTube is really just used as a video depository, and you can search it and watch videos. You can upload yourself talking, but there's not a lot of interactivity. People can leave comments, people can like or dislike a video, but that's really it. There's no instant messaging. So it's a little bit less interactive than the other channels. There's TikTok with 1.8 million Irish users, with 57% female versus 43% male. Obviously, TikTok is skews much younger, although there are a lot of people. That's changing, and that will change as the platform endures. So, if you are going after a certain age cohort, TikTok probably isn't the right channel for you to be on. Same with Snapchat. Still around, even though it was bigger back in the day, 1.9 million Irish users. It's very much a niche platform, and again, skews much younger. So you kind of have to ask yourself, where is your audience? Where are they having the conversations? And where do you want to have those conversations with them? So if you are really trying to build networks to communicate more with your fellow policymakers, fellow politicians, then Twitter is the place for you. It's good to have an enduring online presence that people can find you via, whether that's a Facebook page, a Twitter page, an Instagram profile, or all three. It really depends on you and where you are most comfortable, because at the end of the day, you want your social media presence to be authentic and you want it to be of value. So that's my biggest takeaway is to know your audience and where they're having conversations. You want to be authentic and you want to be transparent. And when we say authentic, we mean you want to maintain a professional image, but you also want to be human. You don't want to be a robot. You want to show kind of like the more personal side, the more softer side of your personality, to show that you're approachable, that you have the same values and ethics and morals as the constituents that you're pursuing. And you also want to be transparent. Transparency is hugely important in social media. When I say transparency, it means owning up to your mistakes, being very clear about where you position yourself and whatnot. An example would be, and this is any person working in social media has had this experience where they've posted something that ends up being an error. And you're always faced with the dilemma, do I delete it or do I own up to my error and state, just make a correction, maybe state a comment saying, sorry, we made a mistake. You really have to err on the side of caution there, because if people are seeing your posts and they're responding to them and suddenly it disappears because you made a mistake, it doesn't look good. So it's better to really be honest and transparent and say, you know what, whoops, I got that stat wrong. It's actually this, sorry guys, that kind of thing. It's an extension of the personality and the persona that you're projecting in reality. And then the last thing is really focus on where you're strong and most comfortable. If you are just getting your feet wet in social media, probably jumping on TikTok and doing a dance to, build your audience is not the way to do it. If you are extremely academic, or if you are really trying to connect with your local small business owners in your community, you probably want to be on Instagram of all places, because small businesses tend to use Instagram versus LinkedIn, and that's where the larger organizations are. If you're really just looking to connect with your community, probably Facebook is a great place, and join some groups that are based around your local community or your county. So it's really just knowing your limits, knowing where you're going to do well, but also challenge yourself, because there is no guide to explain social media from start to finish. There are courses. They will never teach you as much or as well as just jumping in head first and experimenting. You're going to make mistakes, and it takes a little bit to get used to it, and it's going to change constantly. And that's why you kind of you don't necessarily have to be on every profile. Once you get the swing of things, and once you get to understand what different platforms are used for, then it's really a matter of figuring out, okay, I think my audience is here. Like I feel like I can talk for a long time, and maybe I'll upload a video of myself to YouTube. I'll have a channel and I'll just do occasional vlog posts, and then maybe I'll share them out via Twitter. So there's a lot of different options out there. You don't have to be on everything. You don't have to post the same content on everything. Again, focus on your audience, be authentic, and just let your message kind of get out there. So hopefully that helps. Social media really is the Wild West. There's no, I wouldn't say that there's no wrong way to do it, but there's no prescribed right way to do it either. There's a lot of different ways of doing it, and you're going to have to find your own balance and your own frequency and way of doing things. But best of luck to you, and thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Robert. That was super. We have a question for you, and I'm going to ask you all to stay for another 2 to 3 minutes. Apologies about that. How do you deal with the right-wing comments directed specifically towards Migrant, and especially on Twitter?
This is a really challenging dilemma, and it really faces a lot of migrants on social media. And I think, for example, like Hazel Chu has a really great way of dealing with these, where sometimes it's don't feed the trolls. So sometimes it's don't respond to negative criticism when there's nothing of value there. And then there are times when you do need to block them and report them. I think hate is hate, and that needs to be reported. And all the social media companies do encourage people, do encourage their users to report flat out hateful comments and that kind of thing. If it's a difference of opinion, that's a more of a gray area often. And I think it really depends on the situation. But if you are experiencing abuse, then you shouldn't have to endure that. So you should report it, block them, do whatever you need to do. depending on the platform, like Twitter is notorious for it, unfortunately. It doesn't really happen on LinkedIn. Even on Facebook, I mean, it does happen, but your supporters tend to jump in and defend you. And generally what will happen is that'll make the trolls run away because they see that there's strength in numbers there. So it really is kind of up to you, but like the official stance from social media platforms is that behavior is not tolerated, so it should be reported.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you all for participating. I'm going to leave you with Valesca, who is going to close the session. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I think before I have my closing questions, there is something I would like Margaret and Jim just to comment very quickly, because it was something I observed when I was doing interviews with migrants that they were running for the local election in 2019, which was about, it was about being shy. So how they could overcome going to people. So for example, I remember someone saying, the first time I saw my face on a poster, it was the moment I realized I'm doing it. But then she was saying, but I was so shy to go to someone's door to approach people. Which kind of advice would you give to migrants in terms of breaking the ice and try not to be so shy if they can?
Jim, okay, if I take that one?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah,
okay. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are shy or suffer from social anxiety. I'm an introvert, for example, right? So I would much rather be reading a book than doing anything and having a bit of, peace and quiet. But I think that if you really care about an issue, you have to push beyond your comfort zone, which is what I did. I really care about diversity, and I was working for a newspaper and I kept being asked to go on radio and television. I said, no, 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 because I could just be writing my little newspaper articles and hit file and didn't have to deal with anything. So it was an issue, and my deep belief that things had to change that made me kind of get over it. I had to get out of my own way. So I think you have to have a little talk with yourself and say, is this really important to me? Nothing's going to happen unless I get out there and talk about it. So you just have to practice. Do deep breathing is very helpful too. Go for a run beforehand, get all the adrenaline out, and practice, practice, practice.
And that's for Jim.
I suppose what I would say is it's one-to-one. So you're only speaking with one person at a time at a door. So it's not like you can avoid crowds. You don't have to have a public meeting. You can do everything on a doorstep where you're only going to be dealing with one person. And we do that all the time in our everyday lives. That's the first thing. Second thing, if you're outside a church or you're outside a Lewis station, you're just handing out leaflets. You just want them to see your face and your name on a leaflet. But then there is a bit of me would say, if you're really, really shy, maybe it isn't for you. You have to be realistic too, because ultimately, once you've done the election, then you're into the council chamber and you're speaking in public, you're arguing your case, and that's a relatively public forum. And you won't have, we talk about people trying to get on in the chamber. It is relatively adversarial. So, if you're overly shy, maybe it isn't for you. But that's not to say you shouldn't be involved in politics. You can have your ideas channeled through other people, I mean, I never anticipated that I'd be a councillor. I only ever wanted to be someone in the background, strangely enough.
Thank you. That's very good advice. So because I'm aware of the time, so I just want to say that this is our final webinar. So out of this is the fourth webinar and the final one. So I would like to express my appreciation to the speakers today, to the previous speakers, and also to say thank you to Liliana and Teresa. We have been organizing these webinars together, and I think they have been very successful. Today, for example, we learned about the experience of a councillor, so what worked, what is useful for the campaign trail. We learn about concrete pieces of information of how to run a campaign, which kind of skills migrants they should develop before running for election, or how much they have to learn at this point, but especially that they can do it. And also about the many media channels that are out there. But I think altogether, all the webinars so far, they were able to teach us that there is this strong appetite for political participation and leadership among the migrant community. This is one of the strongest points. So, but that migrants, they need resources, they need some level of encouragement and motivation. So we hope that in a way, those webinars, they're useful in that. So I think running for election is not easy for everyone, but for a migrant, this challenge can be a bit bigger. But we hope with this webinar, we can see that more migrants, they decide to run for election, for local elections in 2024. So the webinars, they're not the end of these projects. We have more activities that we're still planning. So I ask you to keep an eye open on the Migrants Council website and social media. We'll be announcing the next activities there. So thank you very much. We are going to close the event now. Have a great evening and goodbye.
Thank you very much. All the best.
You.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.